So I guess I'm live now. This is the first time I'm using Zoom software to be live on YouTube. So little bit of glitches. I think that would be ideal. So in this video, I'm going to talk about videos 510 to 530. And let's start with video number 510. So video number 510 was a personal video where I talked about my journey after MRCS, after having passed MRCS in May 2023. It's been more than 2 years now. And I tried to understand why people who may not be in my position would be very eager to appear in MRCS, especially people who are preparing for NEET PG. Because in India, if you want to become a postgraduate trainee, which is the route to becoming a specialist doctor, then you have to appear in this exam called NEET PG, National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test for Postgraduate Courses. There is also another exam called INI-CET, Institutes of National Importance Common Entrance Test. These are for, I think, six designated institutes: AIMS, JIPMER, PGI. There's one in Kerala, I believe, NIMHANS. I'm probably missing one. So the element of choice or the element of passion for a specialization subject is limited in India. It is limited by your ability to do well, to do well enough in a postgraduate entrance exam in order to be able to exercise that choice, in order to be able to pursue your passion. So if you're extremely passionate about radio diagnosis, not because of the financial implications of it, but just because you find the subject very interesting, you're very curious about it, and that's how you foresee your life to be, you may not always be able to do that because in order to get radio diagnosis, you have to get a very good rank, and getting a very good rank is not easy, and because rank, as it says, it is your performance relative to the performance of your peers. So, when people are not able to do this, even if they have studied in extremely good medical colleges in India, when they are not able to do this, or when they are able to comprehend how difficult the competition is, they look for other options. One of these other options is MRCS. But I wanted to highlight in video number 510 that even MRCS is not a very easy option. It may appear to be easier than NEET PG because MRCS is not about doing better than your peers, at least in terms of passing the exam. But MRCS, the difficult aspect of it, especially if you are somebody who has completed their training in India, the entire training or partial training in India, then the challenge is getting a job in the NHS because uh, people from all over the world are trying to get a job in the NHS, and people from the UK also want to get a job in the NHS. So the competition is stiff. The thing is that I believe the main difference between NEET PG and MRCS is that in MRCS, the exam isn't the toughest part of the process. Exam might be the easiest part of the process. Whereas in NEET PG, the exam is the toughest part of the process. Once you pass the exam, then getting a subject is just a question of appearing in the counseling. But in MRCS, after you've passed the exam, you have to go through a number of other procedures, and then you have to keep applying for jobs and perform better than everyone else who has applied for that same job and fit the bill as per the requirements advertised in that particular job vacancy. You might be the most eligible person for a given job vacancy, but that does not make you the number one choice for the employer. I'll give you an example. So, say there are five criteria required for a job as a specialist ENT doctor: 5 years of experience, at least three publications, audits, clinical audits, knowledge of surgical procedures. And you go through the list and you see that you're fulfilling all the criteria. But even then, you might not be shortlisted for the interview, forget getting the job. Because somebody who might be living in the UK may also be fulfilling the same criteria, and the person living in the UK may often get a benefit, which is quite logical because if somebody is living next doors and is fulfilling the same criteria, and somebody is living in a different continent, who would you give the job to? So that's what makes it difficult in the MRCS NEET PG aspect. Of course, NEET PG is an extremely difficult exam. I don't need to highlight that enough. But MRCS is also not a very easy pathway. So I have always had this fear that I have been misleading people, misleading them into believing that MRCS is the solution to all your NEET PG frustrations. It is not. There are frustrations in the MRCS pathway as well. No pathway is 100% easy. In video number 511, I talked about tennis. More specifically, decades wise, I tried to compare which decade produced the most number of men's singles champions in majors. And this was the genesis of this video. Was I came across this amazing stat that tennis players born in the 1990s had only won two majors, and people born in the 1990s are not young right now. In 2025, even the youngest person born in 1990s is 26 years old, which is not young in tennis terms. And only two majors have been won by tennis players born in the 90s in the men's singles category. You had Daniel Medvedev winning the US Open, and you had Dominic Thiem winning the US Open. I believe Daniel Medvedev won in 2021, and Dominic Thiem probably won in 2020, if I'm not completely wrong. The 1980s, of course, were dominated by the trio. 1980s had Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal. But 1970s produced the most number of major singles champions. I believe the number is 14 for 70s and I think 10 for 80s. But the exact number for that, you have to see the video, which is video number 511, which details which decade produced the most number of men's singles champions in tennis majors. In video number 512, I declared that I started 20 new YouTube channels because I wanted to stick to a single topic on a single channel, which is something I have not been able to do. But what it has produced is a happy side effect. Because those channels invariably have single digit subscribers, it's made me believe that this channel with 1,280 plus subscribers at the time of going live here is a very successful channel, which it is not. It is not a very successful channel, but relatively speaking, when I have 1,280 plus subscribers and I compare it to other channels that I have created where there are less than 10 subscribers, I feel that at least this channel is quite successful. So it's it's self-delusional gymnastics on my part. In video number 513, I talked about why Formula One does not have female drivers, and I invited on this channel who I believe is the preeminent authority in all things Formula One, Ronak Sahu. He's a dear friend of mine, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he knows more about Formula One than anyone living right now. And I will not be dissuaded from that belief. So this was just a tiny clip, a 3-minute clip where he talked about why Formula One can easily have and should have female drivers. It is titled The Cycle of Invisibility, which basically talks about if you do not have female role models, then people watching the sport or the show or the occupation would think that there must be some inherent reason, inherent challenge that is difficult for female drivers to overcome. And because there are no female role models, people don't take up the sport, people don't consider that it is possible, and that perpetuates the cycle of females not being visible in Formula One, women drivers. So in video number 514, I had the entire conversation on Formula One with Mr. Ronak Sahu. He is, as I said, the preeminent authority in all things Formula One. That was a 1 hour 37-minute chat, which I urge everyone who is interested in Formula One to watch. In video number 515, I talked about It's a little, yeah. In video number 515, I talked about Galati kebab. I talked about Awadhi cuisine, my experience of traveling to Lucknow, how I went there, with Vande Bharat, sorry, Vande Bharat Express from with the place I stay in to a place from where I took the airport. I took the plane. The airport, the journey from my place to the airport was by Vande Bharat. I reached the airport. I took a flight to Lucknow. It was a 1 hour 40-minute flight from the eastern part of India to Lucknow, and then I stayed in Marriott in Lucknow, and I attended this conference in King George Medical University, which was the topic of the next video. Which doctors participate in advanced trauma life support? And the answer is that mostly emergency physicians, but also emergency surgeons. Trauma surgery is one of those subjects which have recently come up, and I had no idea the existence of trauma surgery as a postgraduate subject, but I was happy to learn that it exists. In video number 517, a widely watched video, Ronak Sahu talks about why Michael Schumacher remains the greatest Formula One driver of all time. And he has very valid points. Yes, the biggest criticism of Michael Schumacher is his driving style. And people have criticized him left, right, and center for being a very dangerous driver, which is true. There are many instances that you can find on YouTube where he was driving in a very, uh, one would say, crazy fashion. There was the incident with Heinz Harald Frenzen, where he cuts in from the pit lane, almost about to crash into Frenzen. There is the famous Rubens Barrichello incident. And of course, people talk about the Jacques Villeneuve incident, the Damon Hill incident, all of that. But there was more to Michael Schumacher than that. And that's, if you want to find out why Michael Schumacher is simply the best, then you need to watch this video in 517 where Ronak Sahu talks about Michael Schumacher. In video number 518, I talked about my sightseeing trip in Lucknow, especially Bara Imam Bara, Chota Imam Bara, the Turkish Gate, Rumi Darwaza as it is called, residency, the British residency in Lucknow. And what I really liked about Bara Imam Bara, or what I found very noteworthy, were the pictures of the Ayatollahs of Iran. And so I knew about it. I have read newspaper articles about it, want to see it in person. It really gives you a sense of how diverse the country of India is and how deep seated the roots, our cultural ties are with Iran. So that was something I found quite interesting to see. In video number 519, I talked about NHS jobs, the jobs in the National Health Service in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is interestingly the longest name of a country in Europe, or I don't know if it's in the world, but definitely in Europe, it is the longest name, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now, the common theory about NHS jobs is that there is saturation, there is stagnation. Lots of people are applying from all over the world. It's very difficult to get a job. Certainly, if you're not from the UK, then you are not given first preference. People having trained in the UK are given first preference. So it is a frustrating thing. But I have noticed in my own life, every other week, I get a message from somebody or the other who says that they've got a job, they've secured a job. And so it is not like nobody is getting a job if they are from outside the UK. So you have to be persistent and things might work out. In video number 520, I talked about the rivalry that was cruelly cut short by a crazy person. This is the rivalry in tennis between Steffi Graf and Monica Seles, and it was a widely watched video, so please do check it out. In video number 521, I talked about Vlog Brothers, two of my favorite YouTubers. John Green, of course, after whom many of my catchphrases have been modeled, and his brother Hank Green, who is a delightful person to watch. He has very interesting videos. So I would highly recommend Vlog Brothers for anyone who wants to watch high quality content for free on YouTube. In video number 522, I simplified my entire ATLS course of 3 days, what I went through and what it entails. In video number 522, in the ATLS video, I also talked about why ATLS is important for a country like India. We are a country where we may have many doctors, and some of us, we are sent to places where we don't want to be in order to serve the unmet need of the population of India. There are pockets of India where doctors are in short supply. And the government, in all its wisdom, has decided to send doctors to meet the need for healthcare in those areas, which is a very noble initiative. But once you're there, you need to be able to provide the healthcare. And to provide healthcare, you need to be really competent. So, one of the ways in which you can build competency, at least in helping patients survive who have been victims of trauma, especially trauma due to road traffic accidents or burns, injuries, any form of trauma. A very good way of building that skill is participating in ATLS, because ATLS aims at teaching doctors to provide uniform level of care to every trauma victim, regardless of what facilities are available to the doctor in that particular hospital. So that's a very important skill to learn, to be able to provide at least a baseline level of care which can save the life of a patient, regardless of how limited the resources might be at your disposal as a doctor. In video number 523, I talked about the tennis rivalry between Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert, which I believe is one of the most fascinating tennis rivalries ever. And I got a very helpful comment there. Yes, I had talked about the rivalry at great length, but I had missed a very important point, which was helpfully pointed out to me in the comment section, that a shift in the rivalry took place when the tennis rackets moved from wood to graphite. Tennis from in the 70s and 80s, especially players like John McEnroe and Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert, all these players, they've seen different types of tennis during their playing career. They started with wooden rackets, they moved to graphite, which is a huge change. And as this change happened, tennis players like Martina Navratilova, who were fitter and more powerful, relied on more the brand of tennis known as power tennis. They benefited more than, say, Chris Evert. In video number 524, I talked about one of my favorite food items, favorite dishes, aloo posto, and why it is so addictive. In video number 525, which is probably the worst performing video I have ever made, is a video which details every single bagel set, every single six love set in a women's singles final in the history of tennis, not just the open era, right from the 19th century. So 19th century, 20th century, 21st century, across 3 centuries, all the bagel sets. And there have not been many bagel sets in the finals of the four majors, because when you have reached the final, you are one of the best tennis players in the world. You are not likely to lose a set without winning a single game. But that has happened. It has happened about 20 times in each of the majors, in some majors less. I believe the Australian Open has very few occasions when there have been bagel sets in the final. So all the instances I have detailed out, and some of the instances were the winner of the final lost a set to love, but ended up winning the final. Arantxa Sanchez Vicario was one such player. Steffi Graf was one such player. So even legendary tennis players, Steffi Graf, you have Venus Williams, Chris Evert, these players have lost bagel sets, but they are regarded, rightfully so, as one of the greatest tennis players to have ever played the game. So I did want to um, tell the runner-up in the Wimbledon final of 2025 that she also might have a bright future. Of course, it's easy for me to say. I'm just a voice on YouTube. In video number 526, one of the better performing videos that I've made, I talked about the rise and fall of late night TV shows in the US, especially late night talk shows, which are mostly hosted by comedians, how they rose to prominence and how they are slowly fading away into oblivion, mostly due to YouTube. And I tried to highlight this point further in video number 527, where I took the specific example of Stephen Colbert's Late Show, which has been cancelled by CBS. And in And one of the main reasons I believe is that even people who enjoyed Stephen Colbert's Late Show mostly enjoyed it by watching it on YouTube and not watching it on television. So the television channel was not doing well. So the television show was not doing well. The TV ratings may have been high, but the show, as per reports, was losing money. So it was cancelled. Also, I have to say, Stephen Colbert, how funny is he? I have two issues with Stephen Colbert. One, that he sort of became the mouthpiece for a certain political party in the USA, if which is highlighted by the recent interview with Kamala Harris. If a certain person from a if a person who wants to get their views on air, they usually choose Stephen Colbert's show, and there's very little pushback. It doesn't really make for very engaging television, especially from Stephen Colbert, who had very engaging interviews. There's an old Robert Reich interview, which is so fun to watch, despite Stephen Colbert and Robert Reich probably agreeing on every issue. But now S- Stephen Colbert has become boring. He's no longer funny, and he seems to be towing the party line, which is not very engaging to watch for somebody like me. In video number 528, I talked about Hulk Hogan, one of my favorite wrestlers. Of course, he did have a controversial life, lots of things that we can argue about that he did, which really harmed the media. But I look at him as a performer, and I wanted to pay homage to his in-ring persona, Hulk Hogan. He passed away a few days back. In video number 529, I talked about Fat Bear Week. Now, I've seen different versions of body shaming, and but Fat Bear Week is something which is very important for the survival of bears. In fact, bears who are not fat enough do not live long enough. So, survival of the fattest is what I came up with as a title for that video. And Fat Bear Week is something which is an internet event where brown bears, grizzly bears, in the Alaskan National Park, I think it's called Katmai National Park, for a period of, in the summer, for months, they gorge on food, salmon, berries, mostly salmon, to build up additional body fat to survive the harsh Alaskan winter. And this is viewed with the help of cameras placed strategically in the forest, and online viewers vote on which bear has been able to put up the maximum weight so that they can survive, and these bears are crowned as winners. It's a very entertaining show. And in video number 530, which again was widely watched to my surprise, is a video on David Bowie, where I use Frankie Boyle's words to describe David Bowie, which are really poignant. So thank you for watching this live stream. I hope I was audible and visible throughout.